Hello. Hey everyone. Just gonna wait a few seconds to get everything up here. Say hi, give us a wave. It's always nice to know who's joining us, especially on Instagram I can see, but on Facebook I can't see who's here. So say hi. Alrighty. So I think this is going to be a very fun topic. We are talking about confidence, and I think it can be a very elusive thing. I legit have a memory of Googling like how to be more confident. And I can't remember when that exactly was, probably a couple of years ago. But it's just so interesting to think back on that and like I don't know what answers I got at the time. But now I consider myself quite a confident person. And it's just interesting to think back on that. And I was kind of thinking back on what made the difference. And so, yeah, I'll be sharing a bit of that today, as well as like what the research says, what different authors say about this topic. So I think we'll have a lot of fun with it. And I think it's something that we can all relate to, especially if it feels like something we don't have or don't have much of. We can often feel like, how are other people so confident? Hey. It can often feel like, yeah, like this elusive thing, like how are other people so confident and I just feel like inadequate and just crap about myself. Like what are the secret ingredients? And I think this is a very common thing, but I definitely used to see it as when I know enough and when my abilities are better, when I am really good at what I do, I will naturally become more confident. And so I sort of waited for that time when I felt that way. And it never came just from waiting. I don't remember ever feeling like I don't feel like I increased in confidence, at least not significantly that I noticed it, from like 1 year to the next in practicing, right? It's not like, oh, every time I had another year of experience and knowledge and all of that, that I had this sort of jump in confidence. I never felt that. I felt like a very significant jump when I looked at more, and we'll explore this a little bit, or quite a bit, but more my relationship with myself and my beliefs about myself. And one of the catalysts was being exposed to other clinicians who were very confident and secure and like just had a very strong, secure sense of self, but I didn't necessarily see as like way more knowledgeable or just way better at being a clinician than I was necessarily. And so I think that was for me a little bit of like a catalyst to start thinking like, okay, maybe it's not just about what I do and how I do things. Like if I just do things better, that I'll suddenly become confident. Hey, if you're joining on Facebook, say hi. I'd love to know who's joining us, and please let me know in the comments anything that you're resonating with, any questions that you have. I love exploring this topic with you in like a interactive way, so let me know. Okay, awesome. So the first thing I wanted to explore a little bit is your take on confidence. So just sort of getting like a reflection, hey La, getting a reflection of that, of what your view of confidence is and where you think it comes from. And then from there, we'll sort of explore what the research says and my views on it and all of that. So the first one is, when do you feel most confident? Like, are there particular situations or, aspects of your life that you maybe feel more confident as opposed to the other areas? And maybe sort of part of that question is, do you feel generally a lack of confidence, or do you feel like there are specific areas that you don't feel confident in, but others you do, or vice versa? Or do you feel more like it's just a general thing? Like I just generally struggle with confidence, whether that's at work or in my relationships or whatever it is, that you just feel like it's a general thing. So I'd love to know, do you have specific areas, specific situations that you feel very confident versus others, or does it feel like it sort of reaches your whole life? Lauren says, when something feels like truth to me. Okay, that's awesome. That's such an interesting idea. Like you feel, is that like almost when you're speaking about something that feels very true to you, then it feels almost like, I guess you're in alignment with that, and it feels like you can be confident about that. That's really cool. It's not something I necessarily thought of when I was thinking about this, so that's really cool. And that is very relevant, I think, to like when a patient asks you something. It's not only about your objective knowledge, it's about like what have you sort of thought about, what is true for you, and what is your philosophy on this, right? And you've sort of thought about that, and when you're talking, it's like your truth, what you feel aligned with and what you believe. I think that can also be definitely a source of confidence, so that's really cool. When you think of confidence, this is the next question. When you think of confidence, what comes to mind? Like maybe this is a specific person, maybe this is a specific type of person, maybe this is a specific, like attitude or like behavior of someone. Lauren saying, when I think I have the right knowledge about it, okay, and have experience and can share. Okay, so that's when you feel confident about sharing that knowledge. That's really cool. Okay, cool. So what comes to mind for you when you think about confidence? Is it a particular behavior? Is it like an emotional state? Is it like a particular type of person that comes to mind? Right, so the opposite of confidence to me is feeling like a fraud. Okay, that's so interesting, and like relates to what you're saying, right? Like if something feels like the truth to you and you feel like congruent and knowledgeable, that's like sort of the opposite of like pretending and being sort of an imposter and like a fraud. Okay, awesome. Opposite of confidence, feeling like a fraud. Okay, cool. I'd love to know, like, because I know we're talking about like feeling like a fraud. Like what is the actual emotion associated with feeling like a fraud? And related to that, what is the emotion that comes with confidence? I mean, you might not know, but it's an interesting thing to think about, because we say like feeling like a fraud, but that's usually more like, I think I'm a fraud. We use the term feeling sometimes if it's emotions or not emotions. The emotion is shame. Yeah, that makes sense. That's often like a lot of the research on like, feeling like we have low confidence or low self-esteem is often very closely related to shame. So that's really interesting. Okay, cool. And then when someone is confident, like whether that's you or someone else, right? Like maybe you're confident in a specific area and you can explain why you think you're confident in that particular area. Like if it's at work, why do you think you're confident at work? Or when you are, doing a particular sport, then you feel confident. Or when you think of someone else, if it's for you like a general thing, like I'm generally just not confident, maybe it helps to think about someone else. Why do you think that they are confident? Like how does your brain explain the fact that they're confident? Lauren says the emotion with confidence feels empowered. I love that. So feeling empowered versus feeling shame or ashamed. That's really interesting. I love that. Okay, so thinking about like what is the reason for you? How do you explain the fact that either you or someone else is confident? Like what is the reason that they're confident or you're confident? Like I'm confident in this particular sport or this area of my work or whatever because XYZ. And you can also share on Instagram your answers to these questions, just to get us like reflecting a little bit about our views on it. Okay, cool. So the first thing I want to start with is what confidence is and isn't. So to just be clear on like what are we actually talking about? And generally in this live, I'm going to be talking about self-esteem, confidence, and something like self-efficacy as pretty much synonymous. But just know that there are slight nuances to these things, slight differences in these things. But for the purposes of what we're going to be talking about today, I don't really need to go into those nuances. So just know that there are differences, but we'll sort of consider them as the same thing today. And I think it's important to know that I had to look up, by the way, how to pronounce this word. It's hubris. I've always like read it, but I've never actually used that word myself or like heard it much. But anyway, so confidence or self-esteem is not hubris or narcissism, which is essentially like this inflated sense of your abilities despite a lack of any kind of achievement. So we sometimes protect ourselves against seeming, let's say, arrogant or narcissistic, or that we have hubris. Is it having? I don't know. But these are not the same thing as having confidence or high self-esteem, or healthy self-esteem rather. So we tend to think of these, or the way that it's defined is as a near enemy. And I've spoken about this a little bit before, but I'll just briefly go over it here. So near enemy is something that looks kind of like that thing, but isn't, right? So that's something like narcissism and confidence, for example. We tend to think about it as like, we tend to think like, I mustn't be too confident because then I'm like, I'm overinflating my sense of self and I'm being arrogant or whatever. But they can look very similar in terms of like behaviors, but they are coming from a very different place. So that's why they say near enemy. It looks similar, but in actuality, it's a very different thing, and it's actually an enemy of that thing because it's making you less able to be confident when you are, let's say, like self-aggrandizing or being narcissistic. And then related to that, humility is not the opposite of being confident, right? And I think we often do this, like, I want to be humble, so I'm not very like confident about things. And I think it's Brene Brown that I got this from, but essentially she explains how humility is actually one of the functions of confidence. Because if you think about it, like humility takes accepting and acknowledging that we don't know something or that we want to learn something. And that takes a certain amount of being secure in yourself to be willing to learn and grow. So humility actually comes as one of the effects of being confident, and it's not the opposite. So you're not either confident or humble, right? That is not the case. And then also another misconception, I think, is confidence doesn't have to be loud or aggressive. I think this is the same for me with the idea of leadership. I think a lot of people have a particular idea or like image of what leadership or what confidence looks like, and that is often very sort of what is the word, loud. That's very aggressive. So just knowing that confidence can be very quiet and calm. It doesn't have to be that image. And the other thing that is very interesting is that self-esteem, a healthy self-esteem, is not just a continuously high self-esteem. So the reason I mention this is like sometimes people will say like, I don't feel like I have a genuine problem with confidence or self-esteem because I have moments where like I think I'm like the bee's knees or the whatever. Like I just think I'm the shit, right? So I have these moments of like feeling like I'm amazing, And then other moments of feeling like I'm absolute trash and not worthy and just, a useless human being. So it can almost be confusing, I think, to us when we have that. But we almost think about it as a healthy self-esteem is just more a stable one. So it's less kind of swept around by what you're achieving or how that day went or what someone says. It's not like bouncing up and down from the extreme of like, I'm amazing to I'm a piece of crap the whole time, right? It's more stable and more sort of secure. Hey, Tanya. So that's really important to notice, to note rather, that we don't have to constantly have this very high self-esteem. It's more that it's stable. It's less affected by everything that's happening in our lives. It's less affected by what people are saying about us. It's just a more stable self-esteem. That's actually healthy self-esteem. So that's just really interesting. So those are kind of like what confidence is and isn't, which I think is really important to know. Okay, so in Transcend, that's a book by psychologist Scott Barry Kaufman. He describes healthy self-esteem as the outcome of genuine accomplishment and intimate connection with others and a sense of growing and developing as a whole person, which I think is a really cool like combination of things. It's not just accomplishment and achievement, it's also connection with other people and just feeling like you are growing and developing as a person. And I think this is for me like the biggest shift that happened. I definitely always saw it as like when I'm good at what I do and when I know enough, which by the way, never feels like it happens, then I will be confident. And sort of realizing what the other components are of it, I think was the biggest shift for me. So he describes the two aspects of self-worth as, self-esteem as self-worth and mastery. And I think that's where we tend to sort of get a bit misguided, is we only focus on mastery. So when I've mastered this, I will be confident, and we forget the piece about self-worth. So I'm going to read you like the statements of these, and you can just have either share it with me in the comments or for yourself, just writing it down, just on a scale of 1 to 5, like how much do you relate to this sentence? So from like 0 to not at all to 5 to absolutely. So for self-worth, the first one is I like myself. The second is I am a worthwhile human being. I just realized it's going through them really fast. So I like myself. I'm a worthwhile human being. The third is I'm very comfortable with myself. This is definitely something I would have not said yes to. I did not feel comfortable at all. I felt very much like I always just wanted to crawl out of my own skin. Did not feel comfortable in my own skin. Which I can happily say is very different now. Okay, so I'm very comfortable with myself. I'm secure in my sense of self-worth. I'm secure in my sense of self-worth. And the last one is I have respect for myself. And they put it as like, I have enough respect for myself, right? It doesn't have to be this like huge earth-moving thing. It's just, I have enough respect for myself. Just like I would, another friend of mine. I don't have to put them on this like pedestal or anything. Again, it's not that self-aggrandizement and narcissism. It's just being secure, having enough respect for yourself. Okay, and then the statements on mastery. So these you can also rate, how much you relate to these from 0 to 5, and share it with me or just in your own on a page somewhere. So mastery, the first one is I am highly effective at the things that I do. I am highly effective at the things that I do. The second is I'm almost always able to accomplish what I try for. Again, note the almost always, not always. I'm almost always able to accomplish what I try for. The third is I perform very well at many things. I perform very well at many things. Not I perform perfectly at all things. I perform very well at many things. And the last one is I often fulfill my goals. I often fulfill my goals. So that sense of usually if I set a goal, I'm able to achieve it, usually, right? So that's self-worth and mastery. Those are the two components of self-esteem, or in this case, we're also talking about confidence. And then I also just wanted to touch on like, what is the benefit of being confident? And I think when you aren't confident, you probably have a very good sense of how much of a difference this would make in your life. But yeah, just being aware that it really does genuinely give us a greater quality of life. It makes us less anxious. It makes us more likely to do challenging things. So maybe go in a direction in your career that maybe scares you but feels really exciting. We're more likely to take risks. We're more likely to trust ourselves with the decisions that we make. And I'll go into a little bit more about these things just now. But yeah, I think most of the time we're focusing more on the mastery piece and not so much on the self-worth. And this is where it gets like a little bit, I guess, ironic or tricky, which is we need a certain amount of confidence in order to gain mastery. Like I was thinking of this with my surfing lesson the other day. Oh my gosh, I was like terrified. The sea was so rough. And I was so anxious and I was so, like I was holding back the whole time. So no, I was not learning much in that. It sort of reinforced, like my sense of, I'm not very good at this, because I was then not learning very much. So it almost like this idea of maybe the fact that you're struggling with this thing is because you're already anxious, because you're already not that confident. And that makes you less likely to achieve that mastery. So I think that's where it kind of gets a bit interesting. Adam Grant puts it as, learning and mastery require you to abandon your tried and true methods. It requires you to put yourself in the ring before you feel ready and make more mistakes than others make attempts. Ooh. Sorry, it says it's paused on Instagram. We'll go back. Okay, so it requires you to abandon what you already know how to do and the things you're already good at. It makes you try things before you're ready or do things before you feel ready. And it requires you to make more mistakes than other people make attempts. So in other words, making a whole bunch of mistakes and being willing to make as many mistakes as possible. And think about the level of self-esteem and feeling secure and confident within yourself that you need in order to do those things, right? If you feel very insecure, if you feel like you need achievement to validate you, if you feel like you need other people's opinions to validate you, hey, then it makes total sense that mastery would be difficult for you. So confidence is almost like a requirement for mastery as much as it is an effect or a product of mastery. And then think about it, like imagine if we only did stuff that we were already good at. Like if I was only confident because I already knew how to do something or I was already good at something, like I'm just going to keep doing the things that I'm already good at. And like think about what your life would be like if you're only doing stuff that you already know how to do, already are good at, versus trying new things. And being willing to go in new directions, right? That's so much more like alive, and there's so much more, like juiciness in that. Okay. Sorry, it seems like get carried away and talk really fast. So my tea is like a reminder too. Okay. So sorry, this is still on the aspect of like what the, I guess, problem with, or like what we might run into in terms of obstacles when we only focus on the mastery aspect. So the fact that we need a certain confidence already to obtain mastery, the fact that our lives would be generally less rich if we only ever did things that we were already good at. And then also, as you know more, this is why it's sort of like a little bit like the goalposts are always moving. So as you know more, as you learn more, as you can do more, you are exposed to more that you could know. You're exposed to more people who are good at that thing. So you tend to then, that's why I say like the goalposts keep moving, because you never actually get to this sense of, I know enough to feel confident, or I'm good enough at what I do to feel confident, because you just get exposed to how much more there is for you to do and know and be able to do. And that's related also, when we're talking about skills, to this idea of logarithmic growth, which is the opposite, or like different rather, to exponential growth, where it's kind of slow and then shoots up. Logarithmic is more kind of like it shoots up in the beginning, but then kind of plateaus. And with skill learning, that is generally how it happens. So we often, as we get more experience, it's harder to get additional increases in our skill. And so we can get very kind of despondent if that like jump in how good we are at what we do doesn't keep sort of jumping up at the same level as it maybe did in the beginning. So just knowing that those goalposts tend to keep moving. So relying on, okay, when I know enough and when I can do enough, when I do my job well enough, then I will just naturally feel more confident. That isn't going to be a strategy that really works. And lastly, we all know people who are, like I was sort of talking about that, people who are so confident, but they aren't really that knowledgeable or skilled, or not like more than you, for example, right? And we also know the opposite, right? Like we know some people who are so skilled, who are so good at what they do, who are so knowledgeable, and they still have the sense of like feeling insecure and feeling shy and never really feeling confident. Like we all know that it's not, or we all have a sense maybe that it's not this direct linear relationship, that as you get better at something, as you know more, you get more confident, and that's like the only relationship that we're looking at, right? We have a sense that that's not the case. So then often what we're missing is that other piece, which is the self-worth. So not only do we approach mastery in a way that's often not that helpful to our confidence, we also miss that whole other component of self-worth. Okay. So we're going to talk about self-worth now. So self-worth, think about like your self-worth or self-esteem, or yeah, let's say your self-esteem or your confidence is considered fragile when any failures, any mistakes, any imperfections that you notice decrease your sense of self-worth. So if your self-worth is dependent on you not making mistakes, you never failing, and you not having any imperfections, you're not going to have that much self-worth, right? There's just a natural part of being human. We fail, we make mistakes, we have imperfections. So when our self-esteem isn't relying on that, that's a much healthier place to be. And related to this, like if the stakes of what you're doing, like if you're going to go try out a new activity or you're going to go a new direction in your career, if the stakes of that decision are your self-worth and your relationship with yourself, the stakes are too high. And you're even more likely to fail because the stakes are so high. Like think about the idea of like walking on a tightrope when it's like close to the ground. We're much better at doing that because there's not that anxiety and that high stakes involved, versus being like meters above the ground, right? You can think of this example in your practice as well, right? Or at the practice you work at. If you are thinking about my self-esteem and my sense of self-worth is completely dependent on what happens in this treatment, right? Or how the patient is responding to me, or what they think of me, or how much I know. If your self-worth is dependent on that, guess how well you're actually going to be able to perform in that setting, right? The stakes are just too high. We can't have our self-worth be dependent on never making mistakes, never failing, and not having any imperfections. Like mine was totally in practice. This is totally dependent on never not knowing the answer to something, or like, yeah, that's why I took course after course after course. I was like, at some point I'm gonna know everything. It did not happen. Spoiler. And I think, yeah, most of you have experienced that it doesn't work. So this is what I want you to think about it as, like a different approach to confidence and self-esteem, right? Okay, so think about what you could, let's say, achieve, or how much you could do in your career, or how like big, amazing, like bold steps you would take if you took your self-worth, your worth, as just a given. That's just, it's like a birthright, right? You just have worthiness. It's just a given. It's not dependent on anything, and you don't earn it with anything, right? Your worth is a given, and you have your own back no matter what. Right? And this is a really important piece. So think about how confident you would be in your decisions if it was not based on nothing ever going wrong with those decisions, right? Because that's often how we do it. We're like, I'll be confident in my decision if I know that nothing is going to go wrong. And we just can't know that. It's in the future. We literally, there's no place we can go to find that out, right? So you're confident in your decision not because you know that nothing can go wrong, but because you know that no matter what the outcome is, you're going to have your own back. And you can handle it. You'll make a plan, you'll handle it, you'll deal with whatever comes from that decision, right? Like trusting yourself to handle that. Imagine like the decisions you'd make, right? And also, like, I think how much quicker you'd make decisions, because often when we're doing excessive research and we're asking everyone else, what we're trying to do is have some sort of security and assurance assurance that it's the right decision and nothing will go wrong if we make this decision. Whereas think about how much quicker and easier it would be if it was like, I'm going to make a decision and I'll have my own back, whatever happens. I'm going to be that support structure that I need no matter what happens. How much more confident would you feel when you were treating patients if your confidence was not based on, I'm never going to make a mistake, I'm always going to know the answer to their question, right? They're always going to get good outcomes from my care. You would feel much more confident if that's not what you were basing your your confidence on, because you just can't guarantee any of that, ever, right? So you're not basing it on that, you're basing it on, no matter what happens, no matter what I don't know, no matter what what mistake I make, I am going to back myself. I'm going to learn from that. I'm going to not shame myself for that. I'm going to treat myself like a good friend would in this situation. And so you're confident because you know that whatever happens, you've got this, you've got your own back. Not because you know that nothing ever is going to go wrong, which is usually where we, like when we're taking all the courses or we're learning all the information, or we are excessively practicing something all the time, because that is what our confidence is based off of I need to never make a mistake, I need to never know or not know something or say the wrong thing or anything like that. Okay, and then the last example of this is more in a social setting, right? This is also an area that I struggled with a lot. So think about the idea of being confident in a social situation or social setting, not because you know you're never going to say something stupid, or you know nothing ever awkward is ever going to happen, or you know that no one is ever going to say something that makes you feel horrible. But because you'll have your own back, no matter what happens, no matter what anyone says, no matter what stupid thing you do or awkward thing you do, you will have your own back, right? How different does that feel? Because again, this was my approach to my social anxiety, was I need to become so like knowledgeable. I need to, be able to like I need to be able to like never be awkward in situations. That's how I'm going to become confident. So again, I was like coming from the other side, like I have to be perfect so that I never like, so that my confidence will sort of come as a natural result of that, versus, even if I do say something stupid, like I'm not going to shame myself for that. Even if someone says something horrible to me and I feel so awful, I'm going to be the person that is treating myself like a friend, like I would treat a good friend if that had happened to her, if someone had said something to her. Right? So often it comes down to like how we treat ourselves when that thing happens, when we make mistakes, when we fail, when we say something stupid, or we don't know the answer, or whatever it is. Often it comes down to how we are actually treating ourselves when that happens. So that's why I say, like, if the stakes are your self-worth and your relationship with yourself, the stakes are too high. And when those aren't the stakes, oh my gosh, it is like a completely different experience of life. The last part I wanted to share was just related to this. Another thing that Brené Brown talks about is wholeheartedness. And she talks about wholeheartedness as engaging with the world from a place of worthiness. So engaging with the world from a place of worthiness. So again, your worthiness just is. You just take that as a given. You're not trying to like hustle for it, earn it. You're not trying to like get it from how much you achieve, all of that, right? It's just given. It's just how it is. How would it feel to engage with the world, with your work, with your friends, in your relationship? How would it feel to engage with the world from that place? And that's honestly where like that true confidence comes from, is acting from that place. And mastery almost becomes like a natural product of that, right? Like I said, it's like an ingredient to mastery as well. You naturally want to do things, you're naturally curious, you want to learn things, you want to achieve things, but it's not coming from this place of, that's how I'm going to earn my place in this world. It's coming from like, I already know that my worthiness is, right? I'm not like worried about that. I'm doing this from a place of curiosity and the excitement and the sense of fulfillment that comes from mastery, rather than it trying to kind of fill some sort of void that's there. Okay, awesome. I hope you found that helpful. If this is something that you struggle with, I really want to encourage you to come and join my workshop. So it's called The Growth Edge, and it's from 8th to 13th July. I've posted about it in the Facebook group, and on Instagram it's in my bio. So you can follow that and read a little bit more about it. But essentially we'll be spending a week together. That's not like, hours every day. You'll be sent a daily audio lesson, and then you'll kind of reflect on stuff. So you kind of complete the daily lesson in your own time on that day. And I'm essentially guiding you through a particular process that is working on some or other goal or thing that you want to improve on. So for example, in this case, it would be feeling more confident, whether that's at work or in social settings or whatever the case is for you. But if that's something that you want to work on, this workshop will be an awesome place to do that. And then on the last day, we do have a live group coaching call, and that's for any kind of questions and anything that comes up during that week. And we have a Facebook community where we'll be sharing stuff as well. So mostly in the week, you're doing it kind of in your own time, and then there are certain times where we have, live things happening. So yes, I'd love to have you there. It is mainly going to be clinicians, so the community will be of clinicians focusing on some area that they want to grow in. I think it's going to be a really fun and exciting week. And I think it's just really awesome when we come together and focus on our own growth and not always, being externally, looking externally and having to help others. We get to have a time where we are doing something that is really beneficial to us. So it's kind of choosing an area that you feel, if I had to get better at this, it would have massive effects on my sense of fulfillment or my enjoyment or my sense of aliveness and authenticity in my life and career, something that's going to make a big difference if you had to get better at a certain thing. So for example, in this case, as I was saying, like the confidence thing, we're looking at it as confidence being a skill that we can learn and that we can develop. And this workshop will be the place to do that. So I hope I'll see you there. It's going to be really fun and yeah, a nice week together with all the clinicians. Have a great, what is today? Friday. And I'll chat to you soon. Ending.